All right. Welcome, my friends, to another episode here of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the RDP YouTube channel. We're taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise, giving you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle for much greater results that actually last. It's always a Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project, and today's episode is sponsored by the full RDP library over on Amazon, as well as the PDFs of the same books available in the RDP merch store, where you can find snazzy shirts like the ones that I wear here in each podcast as well. And the PDF, if you prefer that, is over on the merch store. The links to all of those titles, including the full suite of the Grind Style Calisthenics books, Grind Style Calisthenics, Suspension Calisthenics, Progressive and Weighted Calisthenics, all of that available down below. So today's episode is kind of piggybacking off of the one from last week, where I talked about building confidence, because after all, when it comes to health and fitness, a lot of us are getting into this game because we want to improve our confidence. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about how to do that. And as I was contemplating the role confidence plays, I started to identify other qualities that are super important in our ability to basically rise above and be better for ourselves, better for those we love, better in our lives, to not only be in healthier shape, because all this stuff applies to eating better and exercising better, but also just a healthier life in general, healthier finances, healthier work life balance, healthier relationships, and so on. So we're really getting a broad brushstroke with these qualities. So if you haven't heard it before, I encourage you to check out the episode before this on building confidence, because it's probably one of the most important ones I've ever come out with. And let's get into other 4 qualities that are practically superpowers you can adopt to rise above the modern common man. So of course, I covered confidence in the last one, and this one piggybacks a little on that, is the quality of problem solving. And I talked about this a little bit because problem solving is one of the best things you can do in order to build confidence. Confident people solve problems. And when the more problems you solve, the more confident you can be. But unfortunately, these days, there's this kind of hand-holding mentality that exists, especially in fitness, where we think, okay, I can't do anything for myself as far as figuring things out. You know, if I say things along the lines where someone's like, should I do this diet or should I do that diet? And what do you think of fasting? And what do you think about high volume versus low volume and stuff? And I can give you a lot of different scenarios. It's got this pro and this con and stuff. But ultimately, a lot of the answers we're going to find for ourselves are actually through experience and figuring things out for ourselves. There's not a program out there or some diet book that you can read where someone's going to lead you by the hand and solve all of the issues and make all the choices for you. Ultimately, you're going to have to achieve a higher degree of autonomy and make your own decisions and problem solving. And I know that can be a very scary thing, but problem solvers are by far the most successful individuals in life in general. They have the most successful relationships. They have the most successful diet and exercise programs. They have the most successful finances and ways of doing business. In fact, most of the time, when you hear of someone out there saying like, I've got this program, I've got this diet, I've got this approach that could totally transform your body and your finances and your relationships and everything, you're hearing it from someone who solved the problems for themselves and their clients first. They didn't necessarily get this information, or they didn't build these programs initially through someone else. They solved that problem. That's like my Grind Style Calisthenics program that I talk about, where it has the 4 phases in the program, largely because I noticed for many years that the vast majority of people who are trying to build muscle and strength are lacking various qualities. And there's no single program out there that addresses all 4 of those qualities. No matter what you're doing in your workout, you're always addressing maybe 1, maybe 2 of those things if you're lucky, but the others will always hold you back. So I built a program. I figured out how can we do this? And it was a very long, painstaking process, especially the quality of tension control. How do we develop that sort of thing? That's a very, very difficult thing to do. But of course, overcoming isometrics was the missing key to that. And so I built it into one program. So that way, excuse me, coughing here. So that way, every workout you do includes all 4 qualities every single time, and you're never missing any of those crucial components. So problem solving is a very much a superpower, because to be perfectly honest, most of the solutions we need moving forward are not something that's been done before. I often tell people that when you're trying to lose weight, when you're trying to build muscle, when you're trying to be successful in anything in life, in many ways, you're trying to do something that has never been done before, ever in the history of man. And of course, you may be saying, well, that's ridiculous. People have lost weight all the time. Many people have built muscle and improved their relationship with their spouse or whatever. Like, that's ridiculous. Yes, but nobody's done it in your circumstances. And that's why real solutions that actually work and solve your problems take a creative aspect to them. They take some trial and error and the ability to assess the situation and have a creative outlet for the problem solving. But when we rely too much on this idea of someone's going to give me all the answers, I just need to keep hunting and pecking through the internet and scrolling through social media because someone's got this thing figured out and they're going to tell me exactly what I need to know. Either we never have the ability to get the answers we really need, or we're always just using half-baked answers and solutions that never really give us what we need. So problem solving is the ability to create solutions, because nobody's going to have the full perfect solution to any big challenging issue you're facing these days. I can give you ideas, I can give you a general program like grind style calisthenics, but chances are very good the actual program for diet and exercise and everything that you need just does not exist yet. You have to create it for yourself. You're going to have to solve the issues for yourself. And if you don't have problem solving abilities, then it's going to be a long, slow haul, my friends. And as I talked about in the last episode, that one of the best ways to improve our problem solving skills is to figure out games, challenging puzzles, and so on. Things that have a solution, but we don't know what the solution is, so we have to figure it out. And that ability gives us, one, emotional resiliency. So that way, when you do get to that point, because you inevitably will, where you're like, I don't know what to do here. I feel like I'm at a total dead end. I'm at a loss. I really don't know what to do. And it's very frustrating. It's very defeating. Well, that can be emotionally hard to take, but know that's part of the process. Everybody who's achieved something successful in life in any way, shape, or form has gotten to that point where they're like, I really don't think I can do this. I'm really at a loss of how I can continue moving forward. I'm not sure what to do at this point. Everybody gets to that point. And if you don't have emotional resiliency to handle that and say, no, okay, I've got to keep figuring this out. And you are like me, when I was a lot younger, I didn't have that emotional resiliency. I would just crumble and just absolutely die on the pedestal, as it were. And usually that it just ends up giving up. And you're like, that's too hard. It's impossible. It's all genetics. I can't do it. And then you give up in that pursuit, and you basically just either totally give up and there is a solution, there is something that could have worked, but you're never going to find it, or you're going to just take a long break and then you're going to come back to it and you're just going to get stuck once again, and it's going to be a very slow process. So problem solving, my friends, is a real superpower in all aspects of life. It can give you an unbelievable ability to create real solutions for yourself and for others. And anybody who can create solutions has a ton of value and lives a better life. Bottom line, that's all I'm saying, as far as more than health and fitness. But again, I've never met anybody who has achieved a fair degree of success in fitness, losing weight, building muscle, who didn't have some problem solving along the way. They hit roadblocks, they had obstacles. Yes, they probably had a coach. Yes, they had mentors. But the whole point of a coach or mentor is to help them through the problem solving process. Let's sit down, hash it out, and see what we can do about this. You know, they're not just always going to be like, oh, that's your problem. Okay, this is your solution. Okay, great. And it always works. It's great when that sort of thing happens, but it's not usually the way it works, especially as you get much more advanced. So problem solving, that's the first modern day superpower that I wanted to talk about today. Lexicon coming on. Thank you very much for coming on. I know I'm late here, folks. I was unfortunately detained for 4 hours, dear Lord, at the auto dealership, the auto shop, because I was driving along. We had a big snowstorm in Colorado here on Thursday. and I hit something. I thought it was just like a chunk of snow, but apparently it was just something in the road that the snow was probably on top, and it just tore this huge piece of plastic underneath my car, like half off. So the piece of plastic was dragging on the pavement everywhere I drive. And for the past like day or so, I've been driving around with this thing dragging around, and people are giving me dirty looks because it's loud and annoying and everything. So I took it to the shop, and they're like, "Oh, we've got a queue of cars, but it'll just be an hour or so." I'm like, "Oh, that's fine." And it was actually 4 hours. So it was like, very, very frustrating. But good news is my car now actually sounds like a real car and not like I'm trying to plow a field. Sniff Rat, good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on in. Okay, so problem solving is superpower number one. Superpower number two. Now, this is a huge one. Anybody who has this commands so much power over their life. It's ridiculous, and it's becoming much more of a superpower by the day because it's one of our most dwindling assets in modern living, especially with the internet and social media. And of course, what I'm talking about is focus. Focus and the ability to control your attention, because your attention is by far your most valuable asset in life. By far, it's more valuable than your time. It's more valuable than your money. It's more valuable than your mental, physical, and emotional energy. It's more important than all of your relationships, and it's more important than your health and fitness. Why? Because where you determine and direct your attention will determine your financial status, your relationships, how you spend your time, your mental, physical, emotional energy. All of the other assets and things that are important to you are a consequence of where you spend your attention every single day, which is why I always appreciate it when you folks spend your attention watching me flap my gums here on the podcast or on my YouTube videos, because I know how valuable your attention is. But of course, these days, we have a lot of things vying for your attention, a lot of things trying to distract you and get your attention over here, look at this, look at that over here, kind of approaches. And as a result, we're getting so fragmented because we live in an environment that has a lot of abundant just things in it. I mean, just take out your smartphone. You've got a million apps on it. You got a million others. You open one app, YouTube. There's a billion, trillion, gazillion videos on that, all of them vying for your attention. And it ends up being kind of like when you go to the grocery store and you've got 20 different kinds of peanut butter, you get paralyzed by choice. And we're just kind of diddy bopping from one to the other. But when we have the ability to focus our attention on the things that are most important, you can say no to the vast majority of things out there. And I'm not saying you ignore it, you just tune your attention away from it. And you can put your attention towards the things that are most important to you. And that's how you get these individuals who seemingly have this laser-like ability to get something very big and important done. Why? Because they have really good focus. They're not afraid to say no because they know the value of their attention. If I come up to somebody who's working out and they're really serious about their workout, and I start coming up and I'm like, okay, yeah, so did you see the new movie? Blah, 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 blah. And I start talking, and they're like, dude, this is good. We'll talk about this later, but right now, leave me alone, kind of thing. I got to focus on my workout because they value that focus. They're also the type of individual who will say, okay, I know what I'm trying to do in this project. And then 20 other people are like, you know what's a good idea is doing this and doing this and doing this. And we could do this and we could shape this and we could do, and all these sorts of things. And they'll say, no, 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 no. I'm doing X. We're going to keep doing X. You stay here. And that's how you get done on time and on budget. So, of course, part of the thing that's important for focus is knowing what's important to you. And this is why prioritizing and being honest about what you really honestly want is key. Circling back into fitness, this is where this is important because a lot of folks are just kind of going all over the place when it comes to their diet and exercise plans. See people all the time coming into the gyms and they'll be like, okay, I'm doing kettlebells one week and the next week they're doing yoga and the next week they're getting into powerlifting and the next week they're doing CrossFit and the next day, they're doing this and that and they're all over the place. And it's good to try and experiment new things. Absolutely. However, when you don't know what you want and you don't have a focus for your attention, then what you do literally isn't really that important. And that's not always a bad thing. a lot of times when people are like, I just want to be in shape, I just want to be fit. What does that mean to you? What is that specific? I don't know. I just want to be fit. Okay. In that case, just literally do whatever, just go ahead and play with a bunch of stuff, play with different methods and stuff. What if I'm doing it right? How am I? It doesn't matter because you don't care. You're just going for whatever. When your goal is whatever, do whatever. However, inevitably, through experience, you're going to become more particular towards particular objectives, particular methods, particular things. Like when I started getting in shape, I was all over the map and I loved doing a bunch of things. But now I'm very much focused on, I want to be able to build muscle and strength, focus on building muscle and strength, particularly with body weight and calisthenics training. Good, that gives me focus. So when someone's like, here's how to increase your bench press by 50 pounds. Yeah, great. I don't care. I don't have to care. It's not something I need to put my attention on. So the more you get specific and dialed in on what you truly want, the more you can, focus your attention. And that gives you that laser-like superpower to spend your resources in a far more productive way. Because if you have a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of energy, but no focus to it, then you're basically kind of getting the same type of stimulus, especially in the gym, as someone who has very little time, very little energy, and very little money, and they're just trying to make the best of what they have. Resources only matter if you can direct them in a focused way. Otherwise, it's a lot of wasted fluff that isn't going to be doing you very good. All right, so that's superpower number 2. The power of focus, my friends. The better you can, the better you can focus, the more you will have for your resources and much faster results as well. All right. Superpower number 3 is flexibility and adaptation. And this is very, very key because a lot of times, especially these days, we're trying to pigeonhole folks into dogmatic boxes of what sort of exerciser are you? Are you a power lifter? Are you a bodybuilder? Are you a CrossFitter? Are you a yoga? Are you vegan? Are you vegetarian? Are you on the carnivore diet? Like all these little boxes that have these defined walls, right? And a lot of times these can be fine, but they lack flexibility. They're too rigid. Same thing in other areas of life, political affiliations, business. What do you do in your job? What kind of skills do you have? It's like, I am a aquatics engineer. That's all I can do for the rest of my life. That's very pigeonholed. That's all you have. And a lot of times, even if we find the perfect plan or the perfect approach, it's not going to stay that way because inevitably you're going to change. Your life is going to change. Your body, your goals, your resources, everything is always changing. But when we get stuck into a very dogmatic approach and way of doing things because it's the best or it's the optimal or it's the one true way, then we've basically put ourselves in our own self-imposed prison. It's all there is to it. You might as well just lock yourself in jail because you've jailed your mind. You've jailed your heart. Here in the United States, we have midterm elections coming up and stuff like that. And I've always fancied myself very much of an independent on the political party, kind of in the middle, but I like to move around. So I'm always driving my friends crazy because I'm like, well, I like that person. Yeah, but they're a Republican. Yeah, I don't care. That person's got good points. Well, they're a Democrat. You can't have both. I'm like, why the hell not? I can vote for a Democratic mayor and a Republican senator. Like, I just go with whatever I like. And they're like, but you need to nail down. I'm like, why in the world would I want to nail myself down to a single political party? Why would I want to nail myself down to a single dietary approach? Why in the world would I want to limit myself so much? And more importantly, the second you identify entirely with one side or the other, you've lost your freedom and free will. You have no freedom and free will at all because you're basically like, well, I'm part of that party. I'm part of this diet. Therefore, whatever they do and what they say and what I should believe, that's what I have to follow along with. You have forsaken your ability to choose. That's essentially what it's done. But when we have the ability to adapt and change and be like, okay, well, I know I used to do it this way, but I think now upon more reflection, I'm a little bit more in this direction here. And I think this might be a better way to go. That's freedom, my friends. That's flexibility. That is discipline. There's no discipline when you're no longer making choices. That's just obedience. You're following along with whatever that crowd is. So I always applaud it when people who are like, I'm very much a vegetarian, but every once in a while I like sushi. Am I doing something bad? Absolutely not. You're saying, okay, that's what I like to do most of the time, but I still enjoy the occasional sushi dinner. That's freedom. That's choice. That's discipline. Staying on the straight and narrow is not discipline when the road is requiring you to steer around obstacles like that ice block thing that I hit with my car the other day, right? And then I had to get my car fixed because I was like on the straight and narrow kind of thing, don't deviate. And of course I hit something and I damaged my car. You damage your body, you damage your life, you damage your relationships when you lack that ability to be flexible in your approaches and your adaptations as circumstances warrant. And again, this goes along with problem solving. When we think I want something to solve the problem for me, we leave ourselves incredibly vulnerable to a very dogmatic perspective that takes away your freedom, that takes away your power of choice and your ability to change and adapt. That's why in the Grind Style Calisthenics program, I'm always talking about having a focus on what is the objective of the 4 phases in your workouts. Because I'm never going to tell you do 3 sets to build muscle or 5 sets or high volume or low volume or anything like that. Because no matter what answer I give you, it's going to probably be wrong most of the time. Because like driving your car, any speed that you strictly adhere to is the wrong speed. We could argue all day long, like you should be driving at 45 miles an hour. No, 25, no, 65. It doesn't matter. Anything you're adhering to without adjustment and flexibility is a wrong choice. But when you have the ability to adjust your speed according to your circumstances, and you have the ability to be flexible and adapt, that's where your power comes in. Because always remember, those who are asking you to be obedient want to take power away from you. They want your power for their whatever their means are, right? Whether they're trying to sell you products, whether they're trying to get you into their abilities to create the changes that they want to see fit and so on. But when it comes to choice, you retain your own power. So having not so much of a dogmatic approach is key to that sort of thing. So when, again, someone could be like, I like this Grind Style Calisthenics program, but I want to add in kettlebell swings or deadlifts, or I want to make this change. Almost always, whenever someone comes to me and they're like, I'm doing this approach, but I want to make this change, I almost always tell them, yeah, definitely do the change. Definitely make it, but I'm not going to be a power lifter if I'm using the pec deck machines. I'm not going to be a CrossFitter if I'm doing bicep curls and have an arm day or something. It's like, who cares? Who cares if you don't fall under some sort of a label or a name or something? It doesn't matter. That only matters to them. It should not matter to you. So that's why, like when I was building my Grind Style Calisthenics program and I started learning about overcoming isometrics, people started asking me, they're like, but is that bodyweight training? Is that calisthenics? Is that overcoming? That's not calisthenics, is it? I'm like, I guess not. Who cares? So what? It doesn't matter. It kicks ass. It's awesome. It's the missing piece that I've been looking for and how to improve neuromuscular proficiency as quickly as possible. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. All that matters is it works. And I was able to adapt it into the program because I had that flexible mindset of I'll bring in anything into the program if I think it's going to be helpful. But I'll also discard anything if I think it's not my sort of cup of tea and going to help me. Again, like there's a lot of calisthenic stuff I just don't practice. I'm not a big skills guy. I could care less about muscle ups. Burpees, I think, are the most ridiculous exercise in the world. People are like, how can you say that? Oh my gosh, blasphemy, especially for a bodyweight guy. I'm like, I don't care. I have no sacred cows. It does not serve the purpose that I'm after here. So if it does not serve me, get it out of here. I don't care. I would fire my own mother from a business if I thought she was hurting the business. When you have a clear objective, you have that focus, and you have the discipline to go after that sort of thing, and you identify what needs to be done, you make those choices. Sacred cows be damned. All right. So what do we got here? We got problem solving, we've got focus, we got flexibility and adaptation, and then the fourth, superpower. And this one came up when I was at the car dealership today. The funny story. So I was at the Honda dealership because I have a Civic that's getting worked on. But one of the things I love about this place is a short block away, there's an exotic car dealership. And you know me, I love my exotic cars. So I'm like, oh, I'm just going to take a stroll over there and take a look at some of the nice cars that are there and stuff. And there were these couple of guys who were detailing some of the cars. And I just started talking to them, striking up a conversation of, what's it like working there and things like that. And they were talking about how this one guy had bought a sports car, and he had a very specific paint job that he wanted. It was a $50,000 paint job. And it took like 6 months for McLaren to make this paint for the customer and stuff. And he was like, yeah, the guy had no problem waiting 6 months for his car because he wanted it in this specific color. But like 2 minutes later, we were talking about something that's like, oh yeah, man, sometimes customers, they call up and they want something and they wanted it yesterday. And this is a very interesting quality that I've noticed myself because, in my line of work, I kind of work with a lot of elite performers in society, people who usually have high-level businesses and things like that. And I've noticed a very interesting thing is these individuals have a very keen ability to switch between haste and patience with things. Because on one hand, they'll be like, oh, okay, so it'll take me, 6 months for that to get done the way I want it to. Okay, fine, 6 months, great. And then on the other hand, they'll be talking about something else and someone's like, it'll take 2 weeks. And they're like, nope, it needs to be done in 2 days kind of thing. Like haste. I need it done faster than normal. And I think this is a very interesting superpower because a lot of times when people are getting stuck in their fitness, what ends up happening is they fall into one of two categories. One is they are just very impatient and they want results a lot faster than they think they can get them. Like, oh, I've been lifting weights for, 3 months, but nothing has really happened. It's like, yeah, it's only been 3 months. You got to have more of a long-term perspective. But on the other hand, you also have those individuals who are showing up to the gym and they've been there for like 5 years and still nothing has really happened. It's like, well, after 5 years, something had better have happened. They're like, no, I'm sure if I just stay on this straight and narrow path, don't make any changes, don't rock the boat, and I just keep doing this thing, I'm sure the results will eventually come. And both perspectives are not going to help you. You need to be able to switch between the two. On one hand, have a sense of haste. When you want to make progress, demand progress of yourself on a day-to-day basis. Today, this workout has to be better than last time. Even in the smallest way, like these push-ups have to be better, or this book has to have more pages to it, or I have to get a chapter finished in this book. You have to have this urgency in your pursuit of improvement and progress. Like, I want progress today. I want progress this hour. If I'm making a video, it needs to be done in 5 minutes kind of thing. But on the other hand, also recognizing that there is a superpower to patience and recognizing that I'm still moving forward and stuff, but if something doesn't seem to be coming quite as quickly as I need it to, then maybe it's just going to take longer than I think. Maybe I'm further back than I thought I was when I was starting. And what I thought was a 100-mile journey is actually a 1,000-mile journey. And not being too frustrated with it and being able to say, okay, it's going to take some more time. It's going to take more effort. It's going to take more. Okay. And again, not crumbling from that, not feeling like, oh, there's no way I can do this. Oh, it's impossible. I'm just going to give up, or I'm going to take a break or something like that. But being accepting that a lot of times the long-term goals may be more long-term than you think. But at the same time, also saying, yeah, but I want to make sure I'm making something happen and improve today. I need something to be better right now. And having both is incredibly important, because without that sense of urgency, you can very easily fall into complacency and just assume the results will come sooner or later if you just bide your time. And there's no promise of that. There's this idea that, oh, if I work hard enough, the usual passage of time will bestow upon me the gifts and the results that I want. There's no guarantee of that at all. It is certainly possible to work your tail off for years and go nowhere. Ask people who work the classic grind mill in the 9 to 5. And they're like, I've just been working my cubicle job for 10 years. I'm sure I'm going to retire and I'm going to be promoted and stuff. And then the boss comes up and they're like, yep, hi, how you doing? By the way, you're fired. Like, what? I've put in 10 years of this company. You're like, yep, here's a cardboard box to put your stuff in. Like, this is not something that you want to find yourself in. There's no guarantee or promise that hard work or the passage of time will bestow upon you any success whatsoever. And that's why you have to have that sense of urgency to be like, I need to know I'm making progress now. But at the same time, of course, recognizing that, okay, you're making progress, but you need to make sure that you have the sense that it may take some time and to have that patience for it to come about as well. So there you go. 4 modern day superpowers. We've got, I wrote them on the board here. That's why I keep looking up to the right. We have, on top of confidence, I addressed in the last episode, we have problem solving, we have focus, we have flexibility and adaptation, and of course, we have the balance between the urgency and patience at the same time. So we want instant gratification, but we're also willing to wait for it at the same time. And I know not a lot of people coming on, but now we can open the floor to some questions. San Diego's asking, hey, Matt, what do you think about the vertical press? Does it add more to the shoulders in classic push-ups and dips? It's hard to say in that regard. I mean, yeah, the vertical pushing movement is certainly a, quote, shoulder exercise. And if you're having trouble developing your shoulders, then absolutely, add it in for sure. But there's so many issues that can come with it. There's mobility issues, particularly in the back. It's one of those exercises that I've personally experienced a lot more injury with, and I've seen other people have a lot more injury with it. It's also one of those things that I've also found a lot of people have a lot of trouble progressing as well. They're doing like an overhead barbell press with 95 pounds, and then like the later that year, then barbell press with 95 pounds kind of thing, particularly because standing, it's also a very total body exercise, which is a good thing. Abs, glutes, quads, hamstring activation, keeping the shoulders packed. A lot of these things are qualities that a lot of people just necessarily don't have that much. So we could make the argument that it's very good for developing those qualities. Absolutely. In which case, I'm a real big fan of like classic pike push-ups and the like downward dog dive bombers and things like that in the calisthenics world. It's a lot easier on the shoulders, typically. Helps to build up that stability. And it is a very satisfying for the shoulders. So it's good. But again, getting back down to it, is it absolutely necessary? Not necessarily. I've certainly known plenty of guys who have very well-developed, very strong shoulders, and they don't do any vertical pressing work at all. So it's not that necessary. And as always, if we want to make sure those muscles are going to get bigger and stronger, we need to make sure we are utilizing them all the time. Because remember, I need to make a video on this, that one of the best ways to ensure the development of a muscle for both size and strength is not to make sure you're doing the right exercise, is to make sure you're using that muscle all the time. And the classic example I always give, of course, are my calves. Like I've always had very well-developed calves. And I honestly don't do a whole lot of calf-specific exercises. Why? Because I have a really strong mind-muscle connection with my calves. They're practically the dominant muscle group in my entire lower body, and I use them all the time. I use them when I'm standing, walking, climbing stairs, kicking, cycling. Everything I do is a massive calf exercise. So you compare that with someone who barely ever uses their shoulders very well, and then they're doing overhead presses and they're getting some activation, versus someone who's really using their shoulders to a high degree of activation with every upper body exercise they do. I'm talking tricep extensions, bicep curls, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, rows. If everything you do is really good on the shoulders, you probably won't find you need the overhead presses, and you'd use them as accessory work rather than primary work. So a lot to unpack there. Thank you very much for calling on in. David asking, rule number 1 in corporate culture, leave your job every 5 years. That's funny. It just came up the other day. If you're a good employee, they'll take advantage of your hard work and longevity. That's funny because I was just talking to someone who was thinking about leaving their job. And I was like, well, how long have you been working there? And he's like, it's been about 5 years. I'm like, yeah, sounds about right. And one of the longest jobs I ever had was working for a big corporate gym here in Denver. And yeah, 5 years came along and I was like, all right, I'm done. Like, obviously this isn't going to go anywhere beyond this. And I need to go on to greener pastures, because I'm very much a believer that your job should be an avenue of growth. It's not just about income and putting food on the table, which of course is very important. You got to support yourself and your family, of course, but your job should have growth potential. And if you don't know if it is, ask your employer, ask the business, like, is there promotional opportunities? Are there avenues where I could take extra training and continue to grow and become more developed? Or it could just simply be, this is the ceiling that I'm at. This is as good as I can get in this job. Now, what other skills can you pack onto that? So you could be like, okay, I'm, I can't think of an example, but I've got this skill set. Now, if I had this other skill set, those two can be used to combine, and now I can develop another thing. And inevitably, you end up, again, solving your own problems, developing your own solutions. Betone03, how often should you switch up your exercise routines, or can you keep the same routine and just make modifications? Yeah, I'm always a big fan. Again, this is where the urgency and patience comes into play. Because when it comes to switching things up, one, I'm always telling people, switch it up as quickly and fast and as often as you possibly can. But on the other hand, if you're using something that's working for you, don't touch it. Rule number one of a program that's working for you, don't change the program. If someone's like, man, I've been doing this pull-up program and it's still cranking hard and I'm feeling great and I'm getting more progress from it, like, don't change it. But it's been 7 months. I don't care. Don't change it. Keep going. So the rule of thumb I always have is stay on whatever's working, even a little bit. If you find something that may be better for you, okay, so you play with a different exercise and you're like, wow, that really hits the chest way better than what I'm doing, change it right away. Like, don't wait, I'll get to the end of my periodization block or 4 weeks or whatever. It's like, no, if you find something better, change it immediately. Just change it. Just go. Don't wait until, I'll change it, my diet on Monday or anything like that. Just change it right away. You find something better, dump the old thing, go to the new thing immediately. But if something's working for you and you're like, I just love this push-pull squat routine that I got kind of thing going on, I'm just really feeling really good on it, then rock on. Keep going. Don't change it. Don't stop it. Because if you keep creating a consistent progressive stimulus, that's all it needs to be. And so, yeah, there are guys out there who are like, yeah, I've been doing kind of the same routine for 4 straight years. I'm like, working for you? They're like, great. I'm like, dude, don't change it. And that's the way I usually do it, is change when necessary. But if not necessary and things are good, then you can keep going indefinitely with things. Mark Mull, are you still bridging? Absolutely. I'm assuming that's bridging. Bringing? Little typo there. But yes, absolutely bridging. Still making good progress with that, feeling really, really good with the bridging. Definitely bridging. And again, it's extension chain work. You could do that. You could do deadlifts, power cleans, hip extensions, kettlebell swings. You got a ton of extension work sort of thing. So bridging is not for everybody, but I'm a big fan of it. Mariano, hey, Matt, do you want to tell us if you have tried to work the biceps gymnast style with the arms extended without bending the elbow? Not a whole lot. I do like the skin the cat move for that, though. Oh, boy, does that destroy the biceps really hard. Skin the cat is a pretty good one to hit. But again, don't get misled with the fact that a lot of times when straight arm work is getting a lot of value for it, it's because the biceps are getting worked in a very elongated position, which usually, if you take a muscle and work it very hard when it's more elongated, almost even stretched out, you're going to elicit a much higher degree of muscle soreness. And a lot of times, again, people correlate soreness with effectiveness, which isn't always the case. But then again, there was a very good piece written on Stronger by Science about bigger ranges of motion, being more conducive for hypertrophy and things like that. So maybe yes, no, maybe so kind of thing. So again, it kind of comes into do it if it's your cup of tea. I personally, though, don't like working my muscles on the very end of the range of motion because I've had a history of injuries with that sort of thing. So I usually like to keep it a little bit kinked in the elbows. Even when you see me do pull-ups and things like that, people are like, you're still keeping your elbows a little bent. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of on purpose. I can probably get a little bit more comfortable with getting a little straighter, but I'm not there yet. And again, experiment, see what you like. SJ, hey, Matt, your take on resistance bands. I'm an older guy and looking for simplicity. Thanks. Very good, SJ. Honestly, I mean, I started with resistance bands when I very first started strength training, and really like them. I think they're a good thing to start with. I think it's one of those things that has a lot of versatility, and it's extremely efficient. I mean, you can get a set of good resistance bands for like under $50, I think, these days. You put them on a door anchor. You can basically replicate most any movement you can imagine. So they're fantastic for that. Personally, though, I just don't like them because of that banded resistance curve. It's just too much for me. In some ways, it's a good thing, like in physical therapy settings and some exercises, it's extremely good. But I don't like how you're starting to pull the band when it's just very little stretch and there's very little tension or resistance, and the resistance increases as you pull. And then at the very end, you've got kind of more of your max resistance, and then it slunks off. And I know a lot of the marketing around it is like, look, it matches your resistance curve and stuff. No, it doesn't. It does not match your resistance curve very well. A typical resistance curve is kind of a shallow, kind of curve like this. And a band is like that. It's extremely sharp and very steep. So that's why a lot of times you'll see people who do use bands, they'll use it in conjunction with weights, like putting bands on barbells for squats and things like that. So that way, most of the resistance is coming from weights. But then again, that's my opinion. And to be perfectly honest, it matters as much as a dead duck. It's not really that important. What really matters for you, my friend, is what do you think about resistance bands? You could get a set and start using them. Like, oh man, these things are awesome. To hell with Matt says these things are great. And that's all that matters. Because it doesn't matter what I think about it. I'm not using them. It matters what you think about it. So here's what I recommend is get a set of the loop style resistance bands, the ones that look literally like a giant rubber band, because those are typically a more versatile and a higher level of resistance than the ones that are just the tube with the handles on each end. You're probably going to get more mileage out of the ones that are the big bands. They're more expensive, but definitely well worth it. Then what you can do is get a good door anchor, of course, and you can loop it around the door anchor. And the great thing about that is you can also put on any type of handle or attachment you like on those with a good size carabiner. So get a big, carabiner from like REI or something. Go to a local shop or just go on Amazon, get a couple handles, maybe some tricep ropes and stuff like that. So you've got all these different attachments, and now you've got a ton of versatility because you can also use those resistance bands, looping them around your body, over your shoulders kind of thing. Deadlifts with the resistance bands are extremely effective. I really like using that. Good for engaging the glutes. And usually when you have injuries and things like that, it's good for working around things like that. So that's my recommendation and perspective on bands. Jensens coming in with his perspectives here. Jen's saying, as an older guy myself, I do rely on the light dumbbell system. Yes, supplemental body weight exercise, well worth and mostly damage-free, going on 3 years. Because always remember, folks, it's not the weight you lift, it's the tension in your muscles. And yes, they are very correlated. They're very, very correlated, but they're not the same thing. You can have a good amount of weight in your hand, but the actual muscle, like we were discussing shoulders the other day, is kind of, due to that activation process. Plus, you have other compensatory habits, like, you could be doing lateral raises, but you're kind of using your hips and your obliques, and you're lifting with your traps a lot more and things. There's a lot of ways that you can lift more weight, but actually not have that much tension in the muscle. So that's why I'm always telling people, focus on the tension in the muscle. Use whatever the weights are. And you'll find that whenever you're using any kind of resistance, doesn't matter if it's weight or bands or body weight or whatever, you're going to have a level of resistance that actually has a slight decrease in the amount of tension in the muscle due to, again, trying to compensate and just trying to move the weight up any which way that you can. So be very aware of the level of resistance you have relative to the tension in the muscle. And again, you should feel that sort of thing. And I'll just throw in my other 2 cents of the ability to engage the muscle also with overcoming isometrics. When people are like, I want to be more gentle on my joints and stuff, try the overcoming isometrics. In fact, I would say combine the two. Get an iso trainer from World Fit. It's very, again, affordable and portable like bands. There's a link down below if you want to check that out. And that coupled with bands, because now you can get maximum tension. And that's a good way to supplement away from that resistance curve. And you can mimic the exact same movements you would be using with the bands. So you're not sacrificing the quality of the technique in either of those. So that's actually a good idea I just came up with. I'm so proud of myself. See, here we go. Problem solving, my friends. It's not even necessarily a problem that we have. It's just being creative about moving forward, about having ideas. Maybe it'll work great. Maybe it'll be complete crap. I don't know, but you can't know until you actually try, until you actually use it. And I'm always a big fan of the idea of you should get pretty good, strong feedback immediately. How do I know if it's good? You'll know. You should know. It'd be like, wow, this is great, or whoa, this is terrible. And much of the time you'd be like, whatever, kind of thing. Mariano's asking, hey, Matt, why was the 21-inch bicep curl popular? What specific benefits does it provide? Can you give me I see what you're saying. Was it 21? 21s? For some reason, I'm thinking that was a different, you're talking about where you use half the range for 7, the other half for 7, and then the full for 7. Yeah, it's 21s. I don't know why that just sounds weird to me to call it 21s, but I don't know. But the reason for it is simply because when we are moving a muscle, right, we just have different levels of resistance. And again, I was talking about bands, how the resistance increases as you stretch it out. That's all dynamic exercise. The amount of resistance against the muscle due to the change in leverage and angles to gravity and things like that, the amount of tension in the muscle changes through any dynamic movement. Again, there's a benefit to overcoming isometrics because there's no movement, so you kind of get around that sort of little thing. So when we're using the 21 approach, where we're doing like half bicep curls for 7, and then the top half for 7, and then the full thing for 7, it just burns out the muscle really quick because you're spending theoretically more time relative to rest in the two halves of the exercise. And of course, you can approach that with anything. You just cut the range of motion in half, do the bottom half for 7, top half for 7, or even switch it up if you like, and then the full thing for 7. And it's a really fun thing to do. It's a good way to change things up. It changes, as I would say, the flavor of the exercise. Does it really do anything? I would say fundamentally, you're not really doing anything that different. I mean, 21 curls is just brutal no matter how you slice it. 21 reps of anything is brutal no matter how you slice it. But the flavor of the exercise is different. So sometimes it's just a good way to do it. Because I mean, obviously, especially with curls, like how many different ways can you bend your elbow, right? It's kind of like, how do they make different kinds of pizza? You've got some very basic ingredients. It's like Taco Bell is trying to make different foods. I always imagine the cooks or the engineers at Taco Bell going like, all right, how are we going to combine cheese, beans, rice, and meat again in some new way? Because dear Lord, there's only so many combinations you can do of that stuff. It's the same thing with single joint exercise. I went to a gym one time that I counted them, 9 different bicep curl machines. 9. I was like, how many different ways do you need to bend your elbow? Now, again, they changed the flavor. Does it really matter as far as your bicep growth and development? Not really. It's kind of like, does it matter if you eat tacos or burritos on your diet? Not really. It's just different combinations of the same thing. So it's about preference more than anything else that you want to have, and the ability to change things up. We were talking earlier about when should you change things up. Sometimes you change things up just because you're bored with it. And it's like, this exercise is getting a little long in the tooth. I'm going to just do something else. And that's one of the biggest advantages to actually just having a gym full of equipment. Most of the equipment in the gym does only 4 or 5 basic movements. You look at it, it's like, that's a pull down machine, that's a pull up machine, that's a cable pull down machine. It's all the same thing, but it's just little tiny different flavors and stuff. So that way, when you're done with leverage pull down machines, you can go and do the pull up assisted machine. It's fundamentally still the same thing. It really doesn't matter very much in the long run as far as your actual results, but it gives you something new to play with. And sometimes that alone can make all the difference in the world of, oh, wow, this is new and fun. I'm enjoying my workout again. And if that's all it achieves, then it's worth it. Excuse me. All right, questions coming in. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on in. B-Tone is asking, once again, how do you know how many reps to do for an exercise and how often per week should you work your muscle for building results? Good general question. So again, no matter what answer I give you, it's going to be wrong most of the time. It's like 5 reps, 5 reps is what you should do. It's like, why don't you just look into a magic 8-ball? Use a Ouija board to program your workouts. It's about the same thing kind of thing. So again, it all boils down to your objectives. Know your objectives. This is why I wrote my book, Micro Workouts. Link is down below in the description. Shameless plug there. But the whole idea with micro workouts, it wasn't for shorter workouts. It's these are your fundamental objectives that you want to pick and choose to focus on. And when you understand what that is, do whatever work is necessary to accomplish that objective. When we base our workouts on you do this much work, you do these many sets, you do this much, you're going to be wrong most of the time. It's like a carpenter hammering in the nail. They don't care how many times they hit the nail. They're just going to hammer it in however many times it takes to get the job done. But once the job is done, they stop hammering. So no matter what number I gave a carpenter, hit it 7 times, it's not going to be enough, or it's going to be more than enough. In both cases, it's wasted time and energy, or it's insufficient. And the chances it's going to be exactly right are 1 in maybe like 10 or so. So, okay, speech over. Let's get to the answers you need, okay? So when it comes to reps, always remember reps are a reflection of intensity. And we always have that scale. You have intensity and you have endurance, right? Intensity of how hard the muscle's working. How hard can you flex that muscle? So anything that requires far more strength, aka intensity, is going to be just lower reps. It's just the way it works. If you take a really heavy weight and you're working your muscles as hard as possible, you're only going to lift it once or twice. So when they say 1 or 2 reps, they're not saying do it 1 or 2 times. They're saying do it with a really, really heavy weight to focus more on strength. But the more you go on that spectrum towards higher repetitions, aka time, now you're on more endurance. Now, is there some strength? Of course, there's strength with everything. There's strength with me lifting this glass because there's some degree of tension. But the lighter it goes, the more you can do of it, and you're more on that side. So the game is always, well, what do you want out of it? What are you going for? Kind of thing. What are you trying to achieve? What's your objective? That's what you select your rep ranges on. Okay? Now, regarding how many times you work a muscle, again, this is depending on fatigue and recovery. Okay? The more you can, the more fatigue you have, the more recovery you need. So you do the workout less. But the more or the less fatigue you have, I'm getting my numbers mixed up, the less fatigue you have, the more you can do it. So if you have something that requires very little stress, you can do it every single day. And that's usually a way to kind of gauge these sorts of things is I do this every single day. It's like, okay, so it's not very hard for you then. It's not very stressful because you can do it every day to a high level. Like if I go to the golf range and I'm driving golf balls every day, it's not that hard on my body. I'm a little tired afterwards, but if I can keep doing it, then it's not really that hard and stressful on the body. But if I do something that's really out of character for me, like I used to run a 5K as part of a work function, and I run like an epileptic monkey. I can't run for crap. And everybody would like, let's watch Matt try and run 5K and then watch how he can't walk right for the next 3 days. I'm not doing that every day. I need to recover. And there's so many variables that come into play of how hard you're pushing, the intensity, how much endurance you're using, your level of fitness, the level of ability in that given day. I mean, there's so many things. That's why I don't have any set workout program at all. I don't have anything regarding that sort of thing. Sometimes I'll work a muscle 5 times a week. Sometimes I'll work it once because it's all over the place. But I'm always saying, okay, I'll work it as hard as I can or like to, and then I'll work it again once it's recovered. And I don't have any plan whatsoever for when that happens. Could be 3 days, could be 2, could be 1. Who knows? It's just when I hit it when I can hit it. And if it needs recovery, recovery. If I jump on that pull-up bar behind me and my back goes, oh God, that does not feel good. I'm like, all right, give it another day. But if I do a workout and the next day I'm like, I really didn't hit it that hard. I kind of want a little bit more. All right, we'll get it again today, kind of thing. And that's usually the way I go about those sessions. And again, it's the objectives in grind style calisthenics. In the strength phase, as I always tell people, keep it heavy. You want low reps for that. If the general rule of thumb for the grind phase is 6 to 8 reps. If you can do 10 reps of something, it's too easy. It's way too light. Way too light. It's not going to build the strength you want. In the strength phase, you want heavy. Usually I'm around 3 to 5 reps myself. If I can do more than 5 reps, it's too easy. I'm not going to do that exercise anymore. I'm going to make it harder somehow because I have to have it heavy. I need that strength. I want that strength. So you can keep adding reps and reps and reps and reps and reps, but you're not any stronger on the last rep than you were on the first rep because it's still the same level of intensity, the same amount of tension. And always remember, coming back again, what we were talking about with changing things up, that you want to add resistance so that your rep ranges are relatively maintained. So for example, if you want to be focusing on strength and you're like 3 to 5 reps and you're building it up, okay, 5 reps and then I'm up to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm doing 20 repetitions. When do I add weight? I'm like a month ago kind of thing. You want to keep your repetitions relatively to that range. So some people who are more for endurance and they want to burn that muscle out, they'll have a weight they can lift 12 times and they'll add weight once they can do it 20 times. But if you're focusing on strength, don't wait till you get to 20. It'd be like 3 reps, 5 reps, 7 reps, 8 reps. Okay, add weight because you stay in that strength zone kind of thing. That's why I'm always telling folks, like, I don't want to ever be able to do 20 pull-ups. If I'm doing 20 pull-ups, it's too easy for that range right there. I want to keep it heavy. So these days I do 3 to 5 pull-ups of a pull-up variation. Next year, I'm going to still be doing 3 to 5 pull-ups. They're going to be heavier pull-ups, but they're still just the pull-ups. I'm not going to get 20 of them. Let me turn this off here. See if that's a little bit better as the light is dying. Playing around here with this new feature on these Apple computers, the new iOS, where you can use your iPhone for the camera. I think this is a little bit better than my Sony that I've been using. Give me a thumbs up if you think this is better than what I've been using over the past month or so for the video footage. Anyway, let's get to some more new ones. Jens M is asking, hey Matt, micro workouts grease the groove, but how about maxi workouts or perhaps better low impact exercises for long durations, 1 hour of direct muscle, 1 hour walking, 1 hour cycling, rowing, etc.? Oh yeah, absolutely. So always remember in that book, Micro Workouts, I talked about how a micro workout is not a specific duration. A micro workout is relatively short compared to what you would normally do. So for example, when I was in college and I was a bike racer, if you told someone you were going for a 1 hour bike ride, they'd be like, why bother? It's so short. We were endurance cyclists. It'd be like, unless you can ride for at least 3 hours, it's not even worth it. But of course, when someone's like, yeah, but I'm going to be doing hill sprints up French Hill, which had like a super steep angle, they're like, an hour of that? Are you kidding me? That's insane. You'll be fried in 20 minutes kind of stuff. So it's always relative, the duration to intensity aspect of it. So I'm always a big fan, though, of, again, changing the flavor of things. It's good to do things longer duration, shorter duration, higher intensity, lower intensity for various reasons. It's all about trying to be able to subject the body to a range of stimulus. I don't care what you're doing. If you're only doing things one way, you're limiting yourself. All right, now the questions are coming on in fast and furious. Adnan Ben, hey there, how would you advise someone who would like to train both hypertrophy and calisthenic skills at the same time? I mean, what's the optimal way to program for such a routine? I addressed this very good in Grind Style Calisthenics. So now we're talking about that relationship between fatigue and performance. So this is another dichotomy we have to balance in our programming, because some objectives, we want a lot of fatigue in the muscle, aka hypertrophy. We want to burn that mother to a crisp, drive that muscle into the ground, make it beg for mercy. But when you do that, you're going to burn it out real fast, and then you're barely going to be able to lift your arms in 10 minutes. But when you are asking for performance aspects, like skills, you want exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. Because if you burn out your muscles real quick on a front lever, you're not going to get much practice in. And how can you possibly get good at a skill if you're barely ever practicing? So this is what you do, is anything that you're doing that requires high proficiency is fatigue is the enemy of. We don't want a lot of fatigue. Strength is another example, right? So you put that in the beginning of the workout. Right? So you put your skill work first. You have a little bit of warm up, you get in your skills, and you manage that fatigue. You don't hold a front lever as long as possible. You're not trying to see how long can I hold a planche for, because you're going to burn it out. You hold it and you're starting to get a little tired, and then you stop. And you hold it and you're starting to get a little tired, and then you stop. And again, this is why I would never tell someone you do this many sets. Because why? If I say do 10 sets and you're burned out after 5, you're going to be compensating and probably learning bad technique. But if I said do 5 sets and after 5, you're still going strong, keep going, keep practicing, don't stop. So that's why when it comes to proficiency stuff like strength or skills, I say do as many sets as you can until that fatigue starts to build up and your performance starts to tank. It could be after 2 sets, could be after 12 sets, who knows? But you want to be able to practice as well as possible, because the whole point of that is to do the exercise better than before. But once you start to feel, okay, muscles are getting tired, I'm just don't really have it in me to do this as well as I can, then you shift into the hypertrophy zone, like in grind style calisthenics. And that's why that's at the end of the workout. And that point, it's like, all right, do push-ups until you're peeling yourself off the floor. Do heavy weight and do dips or something. I'm always telling people, do more than 10 reps on that sort of thing. It's easier to burn out a muscle when the reps are higher, sort of thing. So usually around 15 repetitions is my sweet spot for the hypertrophy phase in grind style calisthenics. You could do 20, hell, even 30 is perfectly fine. But you want to burn out. And so you're using obviously much lighter weight. You're not going to be training strength for that. If I'm doing push-ups that I can do 20 reps on, that's not a strength exercise so much anymore as what I was doing beforehand. I'm just trying to burn out the muscle. And you're only going to get a couple good sets of that. And then it's going to be, game over once you're done there, because once you've burned out those muscles, you're done. You're finished. Gorist Fump, it's good to see you again. Hey, Matt, have you ever tried chains for accommodating resistance on push-ups, etc., as a way that the chains comes off the floor, yada, yada, yada? Absolutely, yeah. I used to have, so funny story. I used to have my home gym was in my basement when I lived in Vermont, and kind of like I have the history or the habit now, I like to hang things on the wall. It just kind of looks cool. I like the way it looks, kind of thing. And so I had a ton of different chains that I would use for accommodating resistance. I put it on a dip belt and do dips on the floor and everything. And people would come into the basement and they'd see all the chains and the straps and things hanging from the ceiling. And they'd be like, gee, Matt, didn't think you were kind of into that sort of thing. And of course, 50 Shades of Grey had just come out and everything. So they're like, okay, back upstairs. We didn't see anything. So yeah, I love chains. I love using those sorts of things for that sort of deal. It works on the same idea as bands and things like that. So it's a lot of fun. I don't have any here, partially because my downstairs neighbors would probably hate me with the chains clanging around on the floor. But yeah, I think they're great. It's a very fun thing to be utilizing. And again, does it really matter as far as your results go? Probably not as much as we would like, but it is just fun. It is a good thing to have some fun with. All right, next question. Hey, Matt, if you had to make a list of movements, exercises you'd consider essential in long-term well-being and strength gains, what would they be? Well, pretty much simple. It's a push, pull, squat, essentially. Well, gosh, that's a good question. Basically, the chain training approach that I have for grind style calisthenics takes care of it for the most part, because chain training is not just about working the muscles. It's getting resistance and force to transfer through the body in a very safe, holistic way. I've got one guy who I'm training over at the calisthenics gym, and he just wants to become bulletproof. He's like, I don't care so much about muscle and strength and all that stuff. I just want to be resilient. So I've got him doing a lot of things that just transfer force through his body in a very, very effective way, because that's essentially how our bodies stay very healthy, is our ability to transfer force through our body. Martial artists have known this for years. If you get even a little bit of force going into a joint, like with a wrist lock, it takes very little force to cause damage. But if you know how to send force through the wrist, you can put your hand through concrete. And so that's why when you're doing your exercises, you want to have a focus on things that are utilizing the body as a whole complete unit. So force is going through the entire body. It's not stopping anywhere. So push, pull, squat, of course, the support chains in grind style calisthenics, flexion, extension, lateral are also very important. But if you're using every exercise, almost of no matter what it is, as a full body exercise, that's the real secret and key. It's not what the exercise is. It's how you're using the body as a cohesive unit in that exercise. And that's what matters the most for that sort of resiliency and being able to stay strong very long. Okay, go again. Hey, calisthenics is appealing as a skill. Any advice for 45-year-old how to go about reducing risk of injury but still progression's advice? Yeah, same thing. So make sure you're using everything. As they say in the calisthenics world, every muscle, every exercise, every time or rep, because a lot of times those skills are isometrics and you don't have repetitions. So if possible, though, get a coach because a coach is like insurance policy. Yeah, you can learn a lot through YouTube and things like that, but a coach will be able to tell you more in 5 minutes than you may learn on your own in 5 years. And a lot of times you're going to learn it the hard way, as I have learned. It's like, oh, my shoulder hurts. And then I'd see a coach and they're like, yeah, dummy, your shoulders are way up by your ears when you're doing push-ups or whatever. How long you been doing push-ups like that? Well, always. They're like, yeah, no wonder your shoulders are shot to hell. Kind of thing. So get a coach. And like I was saying earlier before, try and use that activation and integration. And I know I'm a broken record with this, but overcoming isometrics, folks, it's one of the best ways of learning how to use your entire body. No joke. When I had my ISO chain, when I first unboxed it, there was a guy who always had tons of injuries that I was working with. And he's like, what's this? This is kind of cool. And I'm like, yeah, it's an ISO chain. Try doing a bicep curl. And he's like, okay. And he literally did this when he was trying to curl. And I was like, holy mullet. And he's like, what? I'm doing a bicep curl. I'm like, yeah, no, because he had muscles that weren't turning on. He had strengths imbalances. He had all sorts of things. So instead of doing this, he did that. And so overcoming isometrics can be a really good way of getting everything to link together and work in that synergistic way. And then that carries over into the skills and the other exercises to learn how to use the body as a cohesive unit. And that's only going to make you much, much stronger. Good questions here. Are you Canadian? Vermont isn't in Canada, sort of thing. But yeah, very good. I get that a lot because I was very close to the Canadian border growing up my entire life. Some of my friends even had quite the Canadian accent because they would go up there all the time because the drinking age is 18. They loved going up there in college because it was easier to drink and stuff. But nope, I was from Vermont, but we could be in Canada in 40 minutes driving. We used to ride our bikes to Canada. That was always fun. Like, bye, Mom, going out for a bike ride. Where are you going? Canada. And yeah, it'd be like a full day ride, but we would do it. It'd be a lot of fun. Mariano, hey, Matt, I've changed my leg exercise. Very good. But I always go back to shrimp squat. It's the only one I feel in my whole leg. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, the shrimp squat, the hover lunges, basically shrimp squat, but you're not holding onto your back leg is my go-to favorite. I agree. There's just something about the activation of the hamstrings with that one that you just don't quite get some other way. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I adopted it as well. And as part of the GSC program, it just works the whole leg in a new way. Boy, it is getting dark, folks. So I'm sure you can kind of see here. I look like I'm a demon coming out of the darkness here. We'll get a couple last questions and then we can move on and I'll let you go for your weekend. Thanks everybody for coming on. B-Tone is asking once again, my hips are always very tight and sometimes my shoulders. Any tips to get them loosen up more consistently? So once again, we have an activation issue. I just did a video on isometrics about this. Being able to activate the hips is very key. So here's what I recommend is when you are doing all of your lower body training, keep your hips tight. Keep your hips engaged, I should say. Not tight, but engaged. Try and get your hips engaged because muscles that are tight are usually muscles that are weak and not very active. And so when we have better activation of the muscle, that gives them the freedom and flexibility, again, one of those superpowers, in order to adopt many different positions and have a bigger range of motion. So try keeping your shoulders and your hips more engaged on all of your exercises. Okay, last couple here. Any opinion on kettlebell training? I like kettlebell training. It's very good. I've attended the RKC. And I like it, especially for the hip hinge aspect. But the thing with kettlebells that I mean, they're a great tool. They're very versatile, but they're primarily a hip hinge thing. Like you got a kettlebell swing, hip hinge. You got kettlebell cleans, hip hinge. You got snatches, hip hinge. Like it's the same fundamental movement, just variations thereof. You've got presses and you got get ups and everything like that. But I think they're really good for that type of thing. So a lot of times when people are asking, how do I incorporate kettlebell training with grind style calisthenics? I'm like, well, you just use it on your extension days because it's primarily extension stuff. But again, get a coach. I was one of those poor souls who thought I knew what I was doing from watching YouTube videos and stuff. I mean, this is back when kettlebells just came out on the market and people were talking about like Dragon Door. Oh, Pavel with the name I can't even pronounce right now. Like it's Satsuline. It's like, oh yeah, that guy. So I was like, I don't need to attend any certifications. I'll figure it out on YouTube. And then I did that for several years. And then I did go to a strength certification, which just happened to have kettlebells, and realized I had no clue what I was doing at all and stuff. And that's why I also attended the RKC, not because I use kettlebells a whole lot myself, but because I wanted to know for sure how to actually teach and coach it to my clients. So I love it. It's great. It's wonderful. I think you're going to get a lot out of it that you're not usually going to get any other way. But I'm not one of these, like, I use kettlebells for everything kind of deal. It's primarily the extension chain stuff. So, all right, folks, I am fading into the darkness like Homer Simpson fading into the hedge there. But thank you so much for coming on, folks. Don't forget, check out the links down below for all of the resources here on Red Delta Project, including the entire Grind Style Calisthenics library, as well as the other books like Micro Workouts, Overcoming Isometrics. I've got some new PDFs that I'm going to be uploading to the library as well. So check out my author page, follow me, all that sort of thing for new stuff coming up in the next week or so. And thank you so much, as always, for listening and or watching. I'll talk to you folks next time. Till then, be fit and live free.